Thinking, Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman. The book offers an accessible insight into the two systems of thinking that govern our decisions. System 1, fast thinking. It is automatic, intuitive, and requires little effort. This system is useful for immediate decisions and everyday situations, but it can also lead to errors, as it relies on mental shortcuts, heuristics. System 2, slow thinking. It is deliberate, analytical, and more rational. It requires concentration and effort, making it more accurate but slower. This system activates when we face complex problems or need to reflect. Key themes of the book: heuristics and biases, the use of simple rules to make quick decisions, but these can lead to systematic errors. Anchoring effect. We tend to rely too much on the first piece of information we receive, the anchor, when making decisions. Overconfidence. We overestimate our ability to predict future events. Prospect theory. People make decisions not only based on the final outcome but also on how the options are presented, gains or losses. The two systems of thinking. The central concept of the book is that the human mind operates under two systems of thinking. System 1 is fast, automatic, and emotional, while System 2 is slow, deliberate, and logical. These systems work together, but the first one dominates our everyday decisions due to its efficiency and speed. However, this quickness can generate biases and systematic errors. System 1, automatic intuition. System 1 operates effortlessly and instantly. It helps solve simple problems and routine tasks, such as driving a car or answering basic questions. However, System 1 is also susceptible to heuristics and biases, which can lead to poor decisions. This system works based on patterns recognized from experience, but its speed and simplicity make it prone to errors. System 2, slow thinking. System 2 kicks in when we need to process complex information or make more difficult decisions. It is the system of rational analysis, and although it is more accurate, it requires significant cognitive effort. Often, System 2 intervenes when System 1 fails or when the situation demands it, but since it is more demanding, it tends to be avoided unless absolutely necessary. Relationship between the systems. One of the key ideas of the book is that both systems are in constant interaction. System 1 makes fast decisions possible, but it often requires System 2 to correct or validate those decisions, especially in more complex contexts. Part 1, the biases of fast thinking. In this part, Kahneman explores mental shortcuts, known as heuristics, and the biases they introduce into our decisions. These biases are a consequence of the predominant use of System 1 and manifest automatically. Anchoring. Anchoring is the bias by which people heavily depend on the first piece of information they receive when making decisions. This anchor influences subsequent evaluations, even if the information is irrelevant. A common example occurs in negotiations, where the first offer often determines the accepted price range. Availability. The availability heuristic is a bias that occurs when people judge the likelihood of an event based on how easily examples come to mind. This can lead to an overestimation of unusual or dramatic events simply because they are easier to remember, such as plane crashes or natural disasters. Representativeness. This bias refers to the tendency to assess the likelihood of an event based on its similarity to a stereotype or prototype. While useful in some situations, it often leads to errors when we ignore relevant statistical information. The base rate. Part 2, heuristics and biases. Kahneman delves deeper into heuristics and their impact on everyday life, from personal to financial decisions. Overconfidence. One of the most prevalent biases is overconfidence, where people overestimate their ability to predict events or perform tasks. This bias is dangerous in finance, where overconfidence can lead to risky investments. Kahneman explains how overconfidence can lead to the creation of economic bubbles. Illusion of validity. The illusion of validity bias is the erroneous belief that our predictions, based on limited information, are correct. This phenomenon is common in professions such as financial advisors and market experts, who believe they can foresee market behavior despite evidence showing otherwise. Confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is the tendency to seek and give more weight to information that confirms our beliefs, while ignoring or minimizing contradictory information. This reinforces existing opinions and makes critical and objective thinking more difficult to apply. Part 3. Prospect Theory. Kahneman won the Nobel Prize in Economics for his work on prospect theory, developed alongside Amos Tversky. This theory challenges the classical notion that human beings make decisions in a completely rational manner. Loss aversion. One of Kahneman's most important findings is that people value losses much more intensely than gains. This results in a behavior known as loss aversion, where people prefer to avoid losses rather than seek gains, even if the potential rewards outweigh the risks. Framing effect. The way a decision is presented affects how we perceive it. This is called framing. For example, an option presented as a gain, e.g., save 200 out of 600 people, is perceived differently than an option framed as a loss, for 100 people will die, even though the outcome is the same. Value curve. Prospect theory is based on the value curve, which shows that people are more sensitive to losses than to gains. As losses or gains increase, sensitivity diminishes, explaining why, beyond a certain point, people are willing to take risks to avoid further losses but are less inclined to take risks to increase their gains. Part 4. Choices and Judgments. Kahneman focuses on how humans make decisions and judgments. He analyzes how our preferences can be inconsistent and how the environment and context influence decision-making. Illusion of understanding. People tend to overestimate their understanding of the world, which Kahneman calls the illusion of understanding. This phenomenon occurs because we construct narratives to explain past events, making them seem more predictable than they were. In reality, many events result from unpredictable and random factors. Hindsight bias. Hindsight bias, or the "I knew it all along" effect, is the tendency to see past events as more predictable than they actually were. After an event has occurred, people tend to believe they always knew it would happen, which distorts our perception of reality. Part 5. Two Selves. The Experiencing Self and the Remembering Self. Kahneman introduces the idea that each person has two selves that affect how we evaluate happiness and satisfaction. The experiencing self. This self lives in the present moment, feels experiences in real time, and responds to immediate stimuli. It is the self that experiences sensations like pain, pleasure, or discomfort. The remembering self. The remembering self stores memories of experiences. Kahneman shows that this self is not an impartial observer of what happens. It tends to emphasize the final moments and peaks, positive or negative, of an experience, often distorting reality. This explains why we sometimes remember events as better or worse than they really were. The experience paradox. A surprising discovery by Kahneman is that the remembering self often makes decisions on behalf of the experiencing self. This leads to the paradox that, even if the lived experience was negative, the remembering self can value it positively if it ended well. Applications of fast and slow thinking. Kahneman concludes the book by addressing the practical applications of the two systems of thinking in areas such as economics, politics, and everyday life. He explains that although we cannot entirely avoid the use of System 1, we can improve our decisions by being aware of its limitations and learning to activate System 2 when necessary. And that's it for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and give it a like so you don't miss out on our content. See you next time.